Okay, I'm going to speak today about implementing digital signage, trying to avoid common mistakes that a lot of people actually make when they begin a project. A little bit about us to start with. We've been going for 10 years, so celebrating our 10th birthday this year. We initially set up the company to focus on specialist content design services for digital out of home. We partnered with leading academics in Wales, the University of Wales, who are specialists in neuroscience, in order to understand what works digitally in a digital context out of home, in stores and offices and places like that. We moved to a full service proposition in 2006, so we started to offer the full service including hardware, procurement, installation and ongoing management, which is key to the production of a proper solution. Our clients include very large retailers, so people like Tesco that you will have heard of, Argos, Links of London, Toyota, L'Oreal, and a few leading retail banks. Some of the examples, installations that we've implemented recently, the one on the left there is a project for American Express, which was an interactive travel bureau in Heathrow's T5. That included several interactive and passive displays. The picture on the right is a large format LED sign which is outside of a large venue in Manchester, which is our hometown. This is a stretched format display which we are installing into a variety of checkout displays within some Tesco stores. This is a large format video wall for Giorgio Armani, which is present in the Selfridges London store, and a large format portrait display with a rather nice frame in a Links of London store, which is typical of their kinds of installs. We do quite a lot of video walls, so we have sorry, not close enough. Do quite a lot of video walls, so we have several screens joined together to make one large format display. So the sign on the left you'll see there is about 3 meters high. That's at Harvey Nichols in Liverpool. And we have another sign on the right there using a technology called micro tiles, that's installed in a London shop, John Lewis, I believe. We also do window-facing displays, so high brightness displays, which are important for people like estate agents, anyone who would traditionally put content in their window that changes very regularly. So the one on the left there is for Knight Frank, which is a large worldwide estate agent. And again, another example of a video wall for Toyota, which is across about 160 of their dealers in the UK. This is our most recent retail project, which is for Argos, which is actually creation of their new digital store of the future. There are around 50 or so displays in each of their stores, and each display is dedicated to showing specific product categories. So we have signs dedicated to the toy category, for instance, and the technology category, and those signs will be basically pulling their information from the Argos back-end infrastructure to make sure that pricing is up to date, as well as stock information at the local store. So when I put this presentation together, my colleagues asked me, why are we telling people how to do things better? My view on this was that it's better that our competition are doing things the same way as us, because if they're doing it properly, at least it's a level playing field and they're not cutting corners, which is where we see a lot of projects fail in the long term but maybe succeed in the short term. So in terms of a general overview of what constitutes a digital signage solution, there are hard and soft components. So the hard components are the display devices themselves. There's a display connection interface, so how we get the signal from the thing that's creating the video to the display, a media player of some sort, and a media server of some sort in a typical setup. The soft components are the software platform for delivering the video content and the OS platform that's running on, the content and schedules, the monitoring and maintenance of the platform and the operations, power and data requirements for the solution, and the service and support. So I thought it'd be simple to put basically a list of 10 mistakes to avoid if you're setting up a digital signage network for the first time, or kind of trying to scale a signage network out to a larger group of locations. So I'll go through these in order. They're in no particular order of importance. They're all probably as important as each other, really. The first one is a lot of people specify the technical platform before the content. The big issue with this is that if you don't know what content you're going to convey on these digital displays and where that's going to be coming from and what it needs to communicate, how are you going to specify the right technical platform? At the end of the day, all of the platforms that digital signage that are on the digital signage market can achieve delivering video to a display, but digital signage is a lot more than just a digital photo frame in a large format. So we think the content strategy is key. The idea is that you talk with your client about what they want to actually communicate. So the initial part of that definition is defining who the audience is. So who they are specifically. Are they customers? Are they shoppers? Are they people transiting through an environment? What are they doing? So obviously in a typical digital signage scenario, people are not focused on the digital sign. They are doing something else, be it shopping, be it walking, be it running for a bus. And where are they? So where are they in their particular environment? And what are we competing against effectively in that environment? We have to obviously define what we want to communicate. So it might be a product message, it might be a promotion, it might be a corporate message. Something. If you've got a sign in a workplace, it might be a way of communicating to customers within a factory, for instance, who typically don't have email and all those kind of digital methods. We then have to define the most efficient way to deliver the message. So what we mean by this is, rather than having to recreate a message specifically for the digital signage platform, can we reuse content that's been created already, or maybe repurpose it, and can we do that automatically? And does the content need to be targeted and filtered? The simplest way to do a signage network is just to send the same content to every single location, but ultimately that's generally not going to work in a very large deployment, because that means then that the local area is not getting content that's targeted to their audience. And that's the big benefit of digital. It's not a poster. It means you can have 1,000 posters with very small differences between each one if you wanted to, or large differences. And then define the environment. So look at the dwell times that the environment is experiencing. So we know that how long customers typically may be looking at a screen, if at all. Define the light levels. That's extremely important. It's not like paper, where effectively the brighter it is, the more visible the paper is. In a display context, the brighter it is, the less bright the screen is, effectively, the way it appears to people. Define the viewing cone, so define the cone that a display will create within an environment, or conversely, look at the viewing cone you've got and then match the display to that viewing cone. Number 2, forgetting connectivity. So without a network, a modern digital signage network is just not a viable proposition, really. In the early days, 10 years ago or so, a lot of people had what they called sneakernet, which is effectively USB update, where 1,000 people went across the country and just basically stuck a USB key into a display and let it update with its content. But effectively that becomes an unmanageable system, because you've got to pay for every single update. You can't monitor the network. You don't know whether the content that's running on the network is correct and accurate and up to date. So it's not really a digital network. What we recommend as the highest priority is to utilize an existing network. So if a network exists in a client site or across a network, then use it, because they've paid for that already. Use the investment. That's often not possible, especially in small-scale pilots, though. So what we say at that point is, okay, revert to something like ADSL or 3G connection. They're both good options. They give you what you need to be able to update content remotely. The one caveat to put onto that is that you must be aware of 3G's, and ADSL to some extent, traffic shaping and optimization. What that basically means is that the networks mess with your content as it travels across the network. So if they do that to a large degree, or even a small degree, in some cases, what will happen is the content will effectively get altered, and the signage systems that are playing back a good one won't play that content because it sees that it's been tampered. So a good system will utilise connectivity, internet connectivity or otherwise, but it will not be dependent on 100% uptime. That's very, very critical. You cannot guarantee connectivity. It does fail. And if your sign relies on a constant internet connection, then effectively when that connection inevitably dies, even if it's for 5 minutes, your sign will break. Number 3 is assuming that all displays and display technologies are the same. That is definitely not the case. All screens are not created equal. We have a variety of manufacturers in the world, and we have a variety of technologies, and the manufacturer approaches differ very much between each one. The only thing you can really do is pay very close attention to the specifications. The critical ones from our perspective are things like the warranty that the manufacturer is providing. And that's not just the warranty in terms of the duration, it's also the usage patterns that the display is warranted for. A lot of people will say, well, it's warranted for 3 years, but only for 12 hours a day, for instance, and that's something you've got to be careful of. Brightness is very important, especially in high light environments like shopping centres, shops, anywhere, well, even offices. A typical television is something like 250 candela, which is the measurement of light. A typical digital sign is around 700. So very, very big difference, and obviously that has an impact on the legibility of content. The viewing angles of displays are also important. It effectively defines how wide the cone is that the display can be seen from, and therefore the total audience that you might be able to gather from within that display's cone. And the interfaces are important as well. So you've got interfaces to send video into the screen, but you've also got control interfaces. So for instance, you might have something called an RS-232 connection or an Ethernet connection, both of which can be used to turn the display on and off and check its status remotely. So again, you get visibility from a central point to every single endpoint on the network. You must also ensure or check with the manufacturer in terms of the SLA on warranty replacement. So if you've got a screen installed in a very popular location, one with lots of traffic, you cannot afford to have a screen down for a day or 3 days, which is often the typical SLA that manufacturers will provide. And also something we've run into in the last few years is that manufacturers obviously want to keep up with the latest trends and technology, but the difficulty that presents is that you then start getting brand new models every 6 months. And if that model is a different size, it has different bezels, different depth, what it means is if you've built that display into your furniture in a shop or wherever, that effectively a replacement won't fit. Selecting the wrong software platform. The software platform really is the critical part of the solution. I mean, everything combines to create this chain, but ultimately the software platform is where there's most variability. There's over 300 choices in the market, so it's quite overwhelming really. I wouldn't like to start from scratch, it has to be said. And all I would say is do not purchase software based on a demo with one screen and one computer. The real test of software is when you basically are testing what it can do against a defined list of requirements. So if you have a specific thing that you want to deliver, be it a way of targeting content to a screen or a way of bringing data into your content or maybe automating content delivery, then you must test what you want to do on that platform. Don't accept a demo as effectively a sign-off. Always also consider the vendor's financial stability. Obviously we're in quite a new market to some extent, and whenever we have that, especially in a technology-driven market, what you get is a lot of vendor turnover, so mergers, people going bust, and obviously if you've invested several thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands in some software, you don't want that vendor disappearing and not being able to support that platform for the long term. Number 5 is poor installation and positioning. So this is kind of towards the final part of the installation process. What we have found is that people often will install just because there's a space available, and that's definitely the wrong way to do it. If you're going to invest in a digital solution and spend money buying some kit to communicate a message, don't then hide that kit just because it makes it easy. People also don't look up. One of the key things that people learned a few years ago is that when they were installing screens hung from ceilings above eye level, people just didn't look, they just didn't see them. So wherever you can, get them at eye level. Select the positions, the screen positions themselves based on the measured flow of audience. So do some research before you choose installations, find out where the hot spots are in the customer journey, and then put the screens there if you possibly can, especially where customers typically dwell, so behind counters, behind tills, anywhere where they're waiting and have very little else to do. Inadequate hardware is number 6 on the list. A lot of people who start doing digital signage from scratch do tend to use consumer-based hardware. So obviously it means that the display is cheaper, it means that the media player behind that display is cheaper, so there's a good reason for doing it, but you have to be very careful. Consumer hardware is not generally built for 24/7 usage. It typically comes with a 1-year warranty, which is just not adequate for a commercial environment because your customer is going to expect at least 3 years of life out of it because they're depreciating it over that time. And a failure on a piece of hardware is going to cost a lot more to fix than the price differential between that cheaper piece of hardware and a decent piece of commercial grade hardware. So it's actually a false economy to a large degree. Also, commercial grade screens, commercial grade media players and things like routers actually lack features that you want in a commercial setting. So things like control or monitoring over a display, that's generally not applicable. It doesn't come with consumer grade panels. watchdogs and failovers, so the automatic ability to basically detect a fault and failover to another input, for instance, or a reboot or reset something if a problem occurs. Again, not generally found in consumer grade kit. And a poor and slow repair process is typically what you find with consumer grade kit. Typically 2 or 3 week repair cycles rather than 2 or 3 days or a swap out on site. So it's a really big difference. And part of that is really this whole lack of hardening. So especially on the media player and display side of things, when we talk about hardening, we're talking about being able to cope with a harsher environment than just sat on a desk at home. Unsuitable content is a big issue, probably the biggest issue, and that's the reason we got into the business 10 years ago. We saw lots of digital signs being placed in very lots of out-of-home environments, and without exception the content was appalling. It was typically TV ads, no audio, not even subtitles, didn't do a thing for us. So it's not a TV, digital signage is not TV and not suitable for TV content. It's not a poster either, and it's not the World Wide Web. It is a combination of all three, has the benefits of all three to some degree, but it also has to take into account all the negatives of those environments. So you have to build content very much specifically designed for the usage scenario. So there's some key factors. You can talk for hours about content, but some key points are: keep the segments short, define the length by the typical dwell time of a customer. Don't make segments reliant on audio to convey a message. Make the calls to action punchy and simple so that it can be understood within a matter of seconds, if not less. And make sure type sizes are large enough to be read on the target screen and target environment. It's a simple thing, and it's not an issue when you're building print, because obviously you have a fixed size, but you might be delivering content across a digital network to a 70-inch screen, but also to a 40-inch screen, and there's a significant difference between the point size between those two displays. Very closely related to that is creating high maintenance content. So quite a few networks over the last 10 years have failed because of the cost of content creation. So it shouldn't cost the earth. There's no reason why it should cost the earth. The whole point is modern digital software platforms allow you to automate content generation to a large degree. So you should be able to localize content effectively, inputting local information into a standard piece of content automatically. So for instance, in a Toyota example, we're putting things like the dealer principal's name and the service manager's name and the centre's name automatically into the piece of content, so that 160 centres get served by a single piece of content, but every centre has a local version of that. We do that via templating. So as you would use something like a Word template, it's exactly the same process. You effectively define the layout, the animation, and the styles in the template, the digital template, and effectively the data gets sucked into that template and rendered by the media player. The other thing to do is to integrate data from existing sources. So if you have, in a corporate communication context, an intranet, you can pull information straight out of that. A lot of people integrate straight out of social media. So if you've got your own social media feed, you can show that kind of content on the screens. And like the Argos example I showed you earlier, we're integrating with their existing sources to actually pull down product information, and that includes everything, including the picture, the price, the local stock information, so that everything on the digital screen at any store is synchronized with their other channels. And use existing assets. Typically you can use assets that have been created for TV or print or even web. So there's no need to create assets from scratch. We just say create content effectively to suit. Number 9 on the list is reactive support. So rather than proactive, don't be reactive. So the idea, if you've created a network properly, then you should know if there's a problem before your client does. So that all links back to all of these other facets, which is using proper grade kit, which has the ability to control and monitor, a software platform that is able to then take that information and pass it back to the central head end, so that people can react, who are controlling the network at the head end, can then react to that and effectively schedule some remote support or even an on-site visit. One thing we know from experience is you can't rely on a client's employees to notice there's a problem. Effectively, they're always busy, they're doing something completely different. If the digital signage content isn't right, they're generally just not going to know. So it's your job to make sure that the content is right and that the system is playing back as it is expected to do. And importantly, blank or broken displays really harm the perception of the client. It's probably worse having a black or broken display on a shop floor than it is having no display, really, and it certainly harms the kind of perception of the digital industry in general. And number 10, when you're creating a digital network, you must remember to factor in the logistics side of things. So just things like deliveries, so getting kit to you for configuration, getting kit to site, getting manpower to site, which is typically very, very geographically dispersed. Having site revisits, which inevitably occur because logistically, when you're coordinating with things like store fit outs, walls aren't there when they're expected to be, let alone connectivity. And dead on arrival hardware, it does happen even with commercial grade kit. So all of these things add costs to the general project, and you have to be very aware of them. So be careful and don't underestimate. And that's the 10 things I would recommend you look out for. Any questions?